So stage one, what we're going to do is obviously we're going to make the basic product, which is the frame for our picture frame. And we want it to be high quality, we want it to be nice and level at the top, we want these to fit together nicely so there's no gaps between the two. We want a nice strong joint as well. To do that, we can't just pick up a saw and just have a go. We're going to need to mark it accurately first. If we mark it accurately, we'll cut it accurately. We want to avoid having big gaps like so here. We definitely want to avoid having a situation where we cut too deep and they're both too skinny, so when they go together they're not level at the top like that. Okay, we can prop them up, but it's never going to be as good as quality as if we cut it right first time. The very first job that we are going to do is we're going to select a piece of wood from the box. What we're looking for is ideally a nice piece like that with no blemishes on it, a nice solid piece of wood. What we're trying to avoid is these markings here. So the question is, what are those things? What they are is when the tree grows, you have the rings of a tree. As you probably know, that each ring represents each two rings, so you get a lot of growth in the summer and you get a lot less growth in the winter, so each pair is a year's worth of growth. When the person comes to convert this into timber and cut down the tree and convert it into usable wood, they'll take a piece of wood like so, and you can see the grain of the wood. Those markings are called the grain. They run down the length of the tree as they pull up water and nutrients, and that's the direction that our grain goes as well. You can see from the top that you have the rings are actually visible like so, and you can see it would come from a piece of wood, say something like that. Okay. What we're going to avoid is those knots. The knots are a problem for us. They are very, very hard. This wood is often so soft that I can actually push in with my nail. I could certainly push in with a chisel and cut that wood, whereas this is much, much harder. The problem for that is, if we try and saw on that, it's going to blunt the saw. This can all crumble away over time, and it's certainly not good if using power tools. It can actually kind of explode out. We're not using power tools, but that can be an issue. Over time, those knots, K-N-O-T, they can shrink and they can drop out. That can happen. That can happen rather dramatically. I've actually played with this one before, so it's you can see that it comes out, and you might notice that in fences. You walk past people's garden fences, you see big holes in them. That's because we've cut a piece of wood, and that knot over time has dried and it's fallen out. Okay. There's no problem at all with using this piece of wood, for example. Just don't cut this side. You're going to mark it this side, and you're going to cut it on the good side. Many people like the look of it. It gives it a kind of countryside look, or a rustic look, as we say. They can be aesthetically pleasing to many people. So there's no problem, just make sure you cut the other side. First job, we're going to take a piece of wood, and we'll use this piece, and we're going to mark it. What we're going to do is take our ruler, or our steel rule. Our steel rule obviously is different because it starts literally on 0 there. So I can put it up against the edge, I can feel it with my finger, and I can look with my eyes, and I can be sure that it starts that measurement on 0. We're going to measure down until we get to a bit longer than the width of this wood. This wood measures about 42, so we're going to come down to 50 millimeters. And all you do with your finger there, you put a mark on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 centimeters, or 50 millimeters, a little mark like so. What we're then going to do is make sure we draw a line like this, but we're not going to stick our tongues out and just go, yeah, it's about right, because it won't be. We're going to get it exactly square. We're going to try and get it square. So we are going to pick up our tri-square, and we're going to put this up against the wood. A tri-square has a big thick part here. This is brass, which is very hard wearing. This part is called the stock. It's very important when you use the tri-square that you push the wood up against the stock, and now you can run it up and down and get a perfectly perpendicular or a perfect right angle or a perfect square measurement. We slide it up, pushing the two together. There is no gaps down here. We push it up to our mark, and with a sharp pencil we draw a line. We then turn the wood, we put the stock on the other side, we slide it up until we get to this marking. We put a pencil on the side here and we transfer that across. We chase it around, and we could go halfway, to be honest. You can go the whole way, it doesn't matter, but we just need that first part. We then do the same thing by turning the wood, put the tri-square on this side. Again, move with your thumb until you get to that point, and you're going to draw a pencil mark there. The pencil mark should ideally be continuous all the way around. What we then do is we are going to indicate the waste side of the wood. Very important for carpenters and professionals working with wood that you know where the waste side is. We're just going to draw these lines nice and quickly. They're called hatched lines. That just tells us which side is going to be waste on the floor, there's shavings and sawdust, and which side is the good wood. The good wood is very precious to us. The waste side we can be more carefree with. We're going to cut into here, but we need to know how deep to go. As I said before, the depth is incredibly important. We don't want to be too shallow. That's a very bad situation. We don't want to be too high either. We've got to be exactly right. So we need to find halfway. To find halfway, we're going to use this guy here. He is called a marking gauge. A gauge used for marking. It has a little twiddly tightly lever there. We can slide the fat part up. The fat part with the little brass bits is called the stock. We're going to use the stock in the same way as you do with a tri-square stock. What we do is we use our eye and we put the needle halfway. Now your eye is very good at working out where halfway is, okay? And you can adjust it if you need to. To be sure, what you do is you take the wood in one hand, you take the stock of the marking gauge in the other hand, and you push the wood, your workpiece, up against the stock, and then you do a little tiny marking, just like so, which is there now. If I turn it and I do another mark, like so, I can see that by fluke they actually line up. Or by fluke, I mean I used my eyes and I was lucky enough that they lined up. If they don't, what you do is you slacken it off just slightly, so it still moves, but just about. Okay, and you can adjust it and you can retighten it and you can do the marking again. Okay, what I'm going to do is put it into that point. We're ready to mark. So to mark with this, this is a difficult skill. Many of you have trouble with this, and after a practice you'd be fine. I'm asking you guys to almost go into it straight away, so don't worry if you can't do this first time. Take the marking gauge in your hand, hold the workpiece in this hand, and then what you're not going to do is drag it like this, okay? And you're not going to slide it up and down, moving as it goes. It's going to tear. It's not going to be very good. What you do is you put it where you need to mark. You rotate it so that the wood is touching the workpiece and the needle is kind of facing away from it at that angle. What you then do, a nice tight grip, is you just push and slide. Now people do find this tricky, particularly this bit at the end where it kind of wants to jump out. Okay, but just go nice and slow. You're just looking to make a little indentation, which I've got at that point there. You then do the end, like so, which is even harder. And then we can do this side here, like so. So you've marked there, there, and there. When you've done that, you can take a pencil and you can go into that groove you've made, that little dent, like so, to indicate, and you can mark your waste side, which is the same waste there as there, and mark your waste side here. Okay, many of you will find that difficult, so what I suggest you do is you put it into the vise, the wood vise, and now you can take two hands onto the work, and you can push easier and you can guide it easier. So now you can use two hands, get your hands on the stock of the gauge there, and just drag it up like so. On the ends particularly, that can be very difficult. That's much easier if you use two hands with the piece in a vise. You'll find it much, much easier. Most importantly, and probably the first thing I'm going to ask you to do, is to write your name. On the workpiece. I suggest you do it nice and big, so you can find it easily in a box with your whole classmates in there as well. Do not use a pen. Do not use colouring pencils. Use a pencil. Don't dig too deep, but make sure it's nice and big, and you can identify yourself. I suggest your full first name would be useful. Okay.